the Deltans join with their mates, body and mind together. So they have this ability to sort of fuse. I mean, not like in a gross David Cronenberg kind of way. Hi, thanks for joining me on Words of the Weird. I'm JT O'Neill, author and artist, and I am starting this brand new channel. Why? Good question. I've been really enjoying a lot of the sort of YouTube, booktubes discussions on like weird books and movies and stories, old pulp stuff, sword and sorcery, all kinds of stuff that I'm interested in reading and writing. So I thought I would share some of the weird books and movies and artwork that have kind of influenced me over the years and just join in that discussion. So it may work, it may not, I don't know, but you don't know unless you try. So I'm going to try. I've tried lots of things. Some things work, some things don't. But anyway, let's dive into it. So for the first episode, I have been wanting to read this for a while, only because it's supposed to have shed light on the movie that it was written in tandem with, I think. Not sure. But it is Star Trek, the motion picture, the novelization, ostensibly by Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek. But I think there's some rumblings that maybe it was ghost written. Um, I'll look into that and let you know. Anyway, I saw this movie when I was a little kid. It first came out. I was a big Star Trek fan. Am a big Star Trek fan, and it was. I liked it. It was mind blowing to me. I thought it was amazing. It wasn't very well received at the time because it was so not like the series. I think it was very different. They had like these very 70s sort of like pajama uniforms that they had replaced. Apparently, Space 1999 had become popular, and they were kind of going for the beige pajama look that was popular on that show, which I also liked. By the way, I have all those. Also very weird, like weird existential kind of stuff going on in that show too. I'll have to talk about that one. Um, but anyway, I love the movie, and I didn't quite understand what was happening. It was rated G when it came out for general audiences, so little kids could go see it too. But it had this weird sort of psychosexual innuendo thing going on with this alien character, Ilea, which is touched on in the book. So I want to get into that. And you're like, what? What psychosexual G-rated movies? Well, yeah, that's sci-fi for you. So if you haven't seen the movie, I would suggest watching it. Now, I'll try not to spoil it, but I'll give you a little recap what it's about. So James T. Kirk, Captain of the Enterprise, 5-year mission, right? Uh, Hopefully know what Star Trek is. If you're watching this show, you probably have an idea. Anyway, he's no longer captain. He's been promoted to admiral. In the book, you find out it's kind of against his will. They don't really go into that in the movie. But he is presented a chance to take the Enterprise back because there's a giant cloud coming towards the Earth, which is obliterating things in its path. They don't know what it is. Kind of gather the old crew back. He gets his ship back under protest of the current captain, who gets a little demotion. And they fly off to intercept the cloud, find out what it is, and hopefully keep it from destroying the Earth, as you do. So there is a new um, crew member called Ilea, who is a Deltan. And on Delta, apparently, the people have spent their lives instead of sort of outward seeking sort of like the Federation. They've been inward seeking and raising their consciousness, and being able to like sort of mind walk in their own sort of virtual imaginary worlds. So they have like some like weird pheromone powers that help them bond in this sort of psychosexual union way. So they have to take an oath of celibacy, and she mentions this in the movie. I've taken my oath of celibacy, but they don't you don't know what for. And of course, all the guys are like horny for her. But she's yeah, so she's taken this vow of celibacy because they have this power. So anyway, where it really gets interesting is where you learn in the book here that the Deltans join with their mates, body and mind together. So they have this ability to sort of fuse. I mean, not like in a gross David Cronenberg kind of way, although ultimately that's what happens in the book. Sort of spoilers. Sorry. But that is sort of integral into what happens in the end of the book, and that's all about what's in the cloud and what it's trying to achieve. So in the cloud they find out is and this happens because it sends a probe in the form of like swirling energy. In the movie it's like a lightning bolt thing that goes across the bridge and zaps people, and then but in the book it's the swirling energy is the way it's described, like um, but it takes Ilea and basically digitizes her. So what it is, this thing in this cloud is a giant living computer. Um, and how it got its start is like the sort of climax of the book and the movie. So I won't give that away until a little bit. If you haven't seen it, go watch it and then come back. But it takes Ilea and it patterns her, makes a pattern of her. But when it does, it her consciousness goes with it. So at first it's suppressed, but then it starts like kind of peeping out here and there in the movie. And I kind of find this interesting read now. And of course, people have been writing about, science fiction writers have been talking about artificial intelligence for many decades before what we have right now, that we call artificial intelligence, which is not. That's just a buzzword. That's a marketing term. But I mean, they're a great. Okay, personally, here's an aside. So personally, generative AI, and so I don't use that. I don't use it to create art. I don't use it to write anything that I write. I do all that myself. I like to use my own brain as much as possible. But there are machine learning things sort of built into everything that we do now. So it's sort of inescapable. Even if you're using Photoshop to remove a background for you, that is still machine learning. Now, it's not creating the image for you. In that case, it's a tool that you're using to do it more quickly, so you don't have to go and outline everything and and then delete it. It just does it for you. But that's the boring crap. That's the kind of stuff that you want to have a machine do for you. Please have the machine do the boring crap, not the fun stuff, not the creating the artwork, making the lines, writing the words, all that stuff. um, and there are great uses for it, as far as like uh, calculating and collating things, what it can do with science and sort of wrangling large amounts of information. That there's some really cool stuff. So, but as far as the generative thing, I think it's just I'm with most creative people, it's a bunch of crap. So anyway, but it's still interesting to think about, can a machine become conscious? Um, and I think that sort of depends on what perspective you take of what consciousness is. So a lot of materialists, scientists would say that we become so complex, like life forms become so complex, their brains become so complex that a consciousness emerges from that. There's the other side of the coin, where consciousness is sort of like light. It's sort of a base, it's base stuff of the universe, and then our physiology can become complicated enough to be able to become an interface for that consciousness. So the consciousness is there no matter what. So if that's the case, if that's what you believe, either way, Actually, what if you believe if something becomes complicated enough and therefore consciousness can arise, or if consciousness is a sort of a basic substrate and what you need is an interface, something to interface with it, then why couldn't a machine either interface with that consciousness or develop it on its own? It seems counterintuitive, like when it's and gross that we could make a machine that would become consciousness or conscious, but if you think about these two principles, then it's has to be inevitable, right? So either it is or it's not. Um, who knows? We'll find out, I'm sure, if we live long enough. If we live the robot catastrophe apocalypse, T1000 burning of the earth. Um, but this machine is seeking its creator, and it doesn't know what that is. So it was uh, a little something like a little kernel that had flown off far into the universe, um, and picked up by a machine planet of living machines. How did they get that way? We don't know. It's not really discussed. But they give it everything it needs to create its mission. But everything that they, and this is discussed in the book, which is not in the movie at all, which is kind of interesting. Everything that they do comes from adapting to outside themselves. They don't develop anything from within. So that sort of correlates to our modern AI that just sucks everything in and then kind of spits it back out. It doesn't create anything. It just sort of repurposes what already is. Um, so that is kind of what it's lacking. That's what this is called V'ger, is lacking, and it wants to meet its creator. It knows its creator comes from Earth, so it's headed there, and it thinks that the humans on Enterprise, which is the ship, are an infestation because it only knows machine life. So it's kind of like the flip side of us. It's like it thinks organic life is not true life, that machines are the only true life. And that's what it's looking for its creator to look like it. It wants its creator to be a machine. Just like we want our creator to look like us. And a lot of our mythologies have developed around that. Um, but it finds out, of course, in the end, because what it is, and here's a spoiler, that it is of the Voyager, one of the Voyager probes is Voyager 6, shot out into space. And this is what the machines found, and they're sending it back to us, and it's sort of accumulated all this massive amount of information and stuff. It knows the entire galaxy. Well, they say universe, but it's couldn't have gone, it hadn't been that long that it could have traveled the entire universe. But, so it's a little hyperbolic. But it knows a lot of stuff, and all of that stuff really means nothing. It is just knowledge. It has no purpose because V'ger has no self, but it can't feel anything. It doesn't have any feelings, just like a lot of our arguments about why our computers they're not writing anything real, they're not creating real artwork because they're missing emotions. So the only way for it to really get these emotions is to join with its creator. And the way it does this, and I think this is what is interesting about the book, because it's not in the movie, is that Ilea's ability to sort of join physically and mentally, and I would say spiritually, although that's really not said in the book, is sort of instrumental in it being able to join with the human, which is the old captain, who happens to be her ex-flame, although they never did it, because if they had, he wouldn't have been captain. He wouldn't have been able to leave her. Apparently, her pheromones are so strong. So in the end, that is how V'ger ascends um, in its consciousness. It actually transcends like physical form because it's finally able to join all that knowledge with embodiment and feeling and emotion, and like gain true understanding and sort of evolve beyond the physical, which is pretty cool at the end of the book. Um, so I like it's been an interesting read because there wasn't really that much more about her like that I sort of had heard was in this book, but it did make some things make more sense. But there are a couple of funny things in here that I found that, like, just little asides that I found hilarious. So, because I have to put my glasses on because I better read. There are footnotes, believe it or not, footnotes in a novelization, um, where apparently the fandom was shipping um, Kirk and Spock quite a bit. So that's like oddly addressed in one of the footnotes. Now I'll have to find it real quick. Yeah, but it's funny because you don't usually see novels with footnotes, um, but there's so much going on. The Kirk Spock relationship. Oh, here we go. So, editor's note. It's like the human concept of friend is most nearly duplicated in Vulcan thought by the term, some Vulcan word, I can't say, which can also mean brother and lover. So the Vulcan word T apostrophe HY apostrophe LA, Tahila, I'm guessing, which can mean brother and lover. Spock's recollection, from which this chapter has been drawn. I think they left a word out. Is that it was a most difficult moment for him, since he did indeed consider Kirk to have become his brother. So this is about Spock leaving the Enterprise to sort of purge himself of all emotion, which is the sort of the counterpoint to V'ger not having emotion and wanting to gain it. Spock is half human, so he has emotions, and he wants to purge all his emotions so he can be purely Vulcan. That ends up not working out. So, however, because Tahila can be used to mean lover, and since Kirk's and Spock's friendship was unusually close, this has led to the speculation over whether they had actually indeed become lovers. This is a 2-page footnote, by the way. It spans 2 pages. At our request, Admiral Kirk has supplied the following comment on the subject, which is hilarious. They're going to have Kirk comment on rumors of him and Spock being lovers. I was never, oh, this is Kirk speaking. And it's funny because it's so William Shatner, kind of like I can just hear his voice saying this. So I was never aware of this lovers rumor, although I have been told that Spock encountered it several times. Apparently, he had always dismissed it with his characteristic lifting of his right eyebrow, which usually connoted some combination of surprise, disbelief, and/or annoyance. As for myself, although I have no moral or other objections to physical love in any of its many earthly, alien, and mixed forms, I've always found my best gratification in that creature, woman, in italics. Also, I would dislike being thought of as so foolish that I would select a love partner who came into sexual heat only once every 7 years, which is really funny because Vulcans have something called Pomfar, which they only experience every 7 years. So that is kind of their sexual heat. So Kirk likes to do it more often than that, and he would pick somebody a little more randy than Spock, apparently. So, and which is funny because that sort of like proves this whole like debate over Star Trek wokeness or whatever being a modern thing. I mean, this was written in the late 70s. So this whole thing is like they don't care who you're doing it with. It does not matter to them. It only matters that it makes sense that he wants to get it a little more often than once every 7 years, which is a very Kirk. Anyway, so, but I do have one favorite quote in this book, and this is Spock. So Spock has shot himself out of, not shot himself out of, well, so he's gone EVA. So he's out floating around in his little spacesuit with a little jetpack, and he's being drawn towards the center of V'ger because he's going to mind meld with it. So because they're trying to establish communication, they're not sure how. So he thinks, okay, if I mind meld with it, maybe I can establish some kind of communication. So he's flying through all this cool stuff. So how could the unimaginable immensity of this universe around them be only a brief spark in a still greater reality? It had all seemed so clear and logical to Spock when he had been part of V'ger's thoughts. So he's already merged with him at this point. Spock had also seen that V'ger was almost capable of traveling into these higher dimensions. So he's almost able to do this, but he can't. But just as their starship was trapped inside V'ger, V'ger was trapped here in its present dimension of existence. What a cosmic joke. V'ger was everything that Spock had ever dreamed of becoming, and yet V'ger was barren. It would never feel pain or joy or challenge. It was so completely and magnificent. It was so completely and magnificently logical that its accumulation of knowledge was totally useless. And then this quote also I really like. V'ger has knowledge that spans this universe. This is Spock talking. And yet, in all this magnificence, V'ger feels no awe, no delight, no beauty. And Jim, no answers. So that is kind of how I feel about computers now. They may have answers, but they don't understand the questions. They only understand they don't understand anything. They just cross-reference the words with other words and find things that match because it's all math. It's all calculation. But anyway, if you have seen this movie or read it, what do you think? And what are your opinions on machines gaining consciousness? Because that's a big question. But really, I think the point of this what I'm doing here is kind of exploring that, like weird stuff, weird books, weird stories, weird lit, as it's called. Although it doesn't have to be literature. Everything's literature. It's like I don't. There's no such thing as like highbrow, lowbrow. It's all good, or not good. But then that's a matter of opinion too. So it's like if you like something that somebody else doesn't like, that's fine. And if you don't like something somebody else that they like, then that's fine too. It's like both things can be true. Um, but yeah, the point of this all is really to sort of explore that through movies and art and books, especially books. So let me know what you think. Okay, a little bit about who I am. I am an author and an artist. I've been making artwork for decades now. I think I've worked in motion pictures, animation, uh, television commercials. I've written and illustrated some picture books for kids, done some comics, all kinds of things all over the place, mostly commercial art. I don't really do like gallery style artist. I'm not that guy. All my friends, neither any of my friends really. A few of them have moved on to like doing gallery stuff from their illustration and animation, or of it, which is really cool, by the way. Um, and yeah, that's basically me. So, and I'm working on some stuff now. I have a book coming out in October 13th, which is just a small little sort of book of art, some poetry, and some short stories, and some cool stuff. I'll talk more about that as the date gets closer. And also, you can look in links in the profile. Or people do this, right? I'm supposed to do. Um, if you want to find out more now. So there's a little bit out. But anyway, that's coming. And yeah, yeah. Lots of cool stuff out there to talk about and think about and look at and experience and have fun with. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this, I guess what's the other thing? Like and subscribe. You're supposed to say that. Okay, well then do that. That would be great. You can check out my website and find out about stuff. Sign up for the newsletter, blah blah, and stuff like that. All right. See you next time.